Okay, good morning, everyone. We will look through CNS radiology basics today. Uh, First, we will look at anatomy of the brain using CT. CT is the most widely used and initial imaging modality for the brain. As you can see here, this is the cranial most axial section of CT brain. And this is the right side, this is the left side, this is anterior, this is posterior. This is basic orientation. Right side frontal lobe, left side frontal lobe, right side parietal lobe, left side parietal lobe, and a small portion of the occipital lobes posteriorly. As we go further down, this is the axial section showing a larger portion of the frontal lobes, right side, left side, and you begin to see the body lateral ventricle here and the occipital lobes on either side. And in the midline, you have the superior sagittal sinus traversing posterior to anterior. As we go further down, caudally, this you see the lateral ventricle's body more clearly, and you see the slightly brighter structure inside is the choroid plexus of the lateral ventricles, and these indurations are called the sulci, and the spaces are called the gyri. So you have the sulci are the spaces, and these folds of cerebral parenchyma are called the sulci. So this frontal lobe, you can see on either side, superior sagittal sinus. In the just parasagittal, this brain parenchyma is called the corpus callosum. So it's basically a connecting tissue, right side to left side. And it has some developmental significance. Sometimes there can be dysgenesis or agenesis of that, which is better appreciated on, but just showing you the anatomy on the CT to start with. And this is the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle, or it's also called the occipital horn. It's closer to the occipital lobe. As we go further down, you can see that there is the frontal horn of lateral ventricle here. Why is it doing this? Okay, so so frontal lobe, and then you have the caudate lobe, and this is the area of the internal capsule where you can see slightly grayer color compared to the other nearby tissue. Here you have the thalamus on either side, right side thalamus, left side thalamus, and these are the lateral ventricle. So you have the posterior or occipital horn. And this is the temporal lobe, this area, and this is the Sylvian fissure. So here you can see very well the caudate nucleus just adjacent to frontal horn of lateral ventricle. And you have the third ventricle, and this is the quadrigeminal cistern. Fluid-filled spaces appear black on a CT, that is hypodense. Okay, and the soft tissue is slightly grayer, so a little more dense than fluid. And bone is very, very dense. It's like the maximum density of all the body structures, except any calcification or calculi, which will also appear similar. So that's very hyperdense. Density is the terminology used to describe the appearance of the shades of gray on CT. And here you can see, here is the thalamus, right side, left side, and a part of the midbrain starts to be visible. These posterior area, this is called cerebellum, and here on either side you have the temporal lobes. As you can see here, we've started seeing the Sylvian fissure separating frontal lobe and the temporal lobe more clearly over here. And this is the third ventricle, this is frontal horn, lateral ventricles, right and left, third ventricle. And here you start seeing the fourth ventricle. And along the sides of the midbrain, you have the quadrigeminal cistern again. And this is basically midbrain, butterfly shape. And this is the temporal lobe, right side, left side, and cerebellum. Little more inferior section. This is right temporal lobe, right frontal lobe, left frontal lobe, basal sections, right temporal lobe, left temporal lobe. This is the pons, midbrain pons transition. And here you have the peduncle. You have superior cerebellar, middle and inferior cerebellar peduncles connecting the midbrain pons and medulla to the cerebellum on right and left sides. And here you start seeing the fourth ventricle. On either side, you start seeing the mastoid air cells inside the temporal bone near the ears. This is the external pinna, this fold of skin that we see. And here your right side mastoid air cells, left side mastoid air cells, and these are the sphenoid air sinuses and basal sections of the frontal lobe, temporal lobes, and here you have the pons medulla and then cerebellum. Same thing, but most inferiorly, you have the medulla oblongata, and you see more of the paranasal sinuses. So here you have the sphenoid sinus, right side ethmoid, left side ethmoid, and right side frontal, left side frontal, right orbit, left orbit. And this structure, linear, that goes from anterior to posterior is the optic nerve. If it's the thinner one, the slightly thicker ones would be the muscles. And here you can see the eye, the right side globe, left side globe, and more clearly the paranasal sinuses and the bony walls of those sinuses. And here you have the skull formed by this actually it started C1 is the anterior arch of Atlas, and this is the posterior arch. So this is the essential anatomy. And then further down, spinal cord. Right side maxillary sinus, left side maxillary sinus, and this is the nasal cavity. Just a sagittal section along the midline, as I said earlier. So the superior sagittal sinus traverses all along this length of the brain. And you have the straight sinus from here to here. Okay, and you have this is the corpus callosum. When this is not properly visualized, then you can suspect if there is any dysgenesis. Inferior to that, you have the lateral ventricle, and then you have the thalamus. Here you have the midbrain, and then this is the pons and medulla. And if you can see, this is the base of the skull. Foramen magnum is this region is called foramen magnum. So you have to always look for any inferior herniation of the cerebellar tonsil, the inferior most part of the cerebellum called cerebellar tonsil. It should be above this line connecting the lower margin of the, what is this? Anterior part of occiput, and this is the posterior part. So this should be above this line, imaginary line. This is the pituitary gland, and surrounding the midbrain, you have the quadrigeminal cistern. Here you have the prepontine cistern. This is the ventricle. On a sagittal section, it looks like a triangle. And here you have the lateral ventricle, and here you have the third ventricle. Okay, so you have the frontal sinus. Here you have the sphenoid sinus. Here you have the nasal septum, and then part of the nasal turbinates can be seen. Here you have the hard palate. This is the nasopharynx. So here you have the falx cerebri in the middle. That is just the fold. Okay, and along that you see the superior sagittal sinus. Here you see coronal view, and earlier we saw sagittal view. Sagittal means along the middle. Parasagittal means just parallel to the mid-sagittal plane. This is coronal. So basically you have just a horizontal longitudinal view, not horizontal, like how you see the face. So just imagine you're trying to look at the face, but in different sections parallel to that. So this is the coronal. Here you have the corpus callosum, and here you have the lateral ventricles, third ventricle, just adjacent to this caudate lobe, and then you have the putamen or the basal ganglia, and here midbrain, pons, and medulla, and on either side cerebellum, tentorium cerebelli. Now we'll just see some basic common pathologies. So intracranial hemorrhage is basically hemorrhage inside the skull. We basically classify into intraaxial and extraaxial. Intraaxial is when the bleeding happens within the intraparenchymal or intraventricular. And extraaxial is when it is between the brain parenchyma and the skull, like in the meningeal layers. So you have the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. So extradural is outside the dura mater, between dura and matter, and subarachnoid is underneath the arachnoid matter. So these are the levels where you can have extraaxial bleeding. And extracranial is when you have soft tissue hematoma or outside the skull, okay, like of the scalp hematoma, all that. Then intracranial hemorrhage, basically why we need to look out for this is because they exert a lot of mass effect and they can affect prognosis of the patient very quickly. So it's important to identify and treat the patient soon. Signs of midline shift, effaced ventricles, and herniation of brain structures help us to identify that there is a significant mass effect. And the duration of the bleeding is, if it's acute, it's a few hours to a few days. And then it will be very bright, high dense blood, okay, on CT. And subacute means a few days to a few weeks. That can be a little similar to the brain parenchyma in appearance. And chronic will be like the CSF, it will be very, very dark, like just like any other fluid. And acute on chronic is when you see some bright area on a dark area. So we will see all this. Now, this is just a diagrammatic representation. So the green one you see is the dura mater. Outside that, you have the extradural hemorrhage, which is biconvex. You can see that biconvex shape of extradural hemorrhage. Then the blue color one is the arachnoid mater, and the pink color one is pia mater. So you can see hemorrhage is basically not biconvex. It's just have one side convex and the other side is concave. Sometimes it may not even have this greater shape also, but typical extradural usually will have this biconvex shape. And subarachnoid will to the sulci, so or the cisterns. So it will take the shape of the normal anatomy of the sulci and the cisterns. And intraventricular will go, and this is because this is anterior, this is posterior, patient is lying supine. So this, because of gravity, the blood usually tends to pull up at the posterior part of the lateral horns or occipital horn of lateral ventricles. And intraparenchymal is usually in the region of capsular basal ganglia, as we will see now. Now, subarachnoid will usually, it is in the basal sections, you will see the basal cisterns will be full of hyperdense blood. Okay. So epidural or extradural hemorrhage basically is common to associate with head trauma, and usually it's an arterial bleed, and often middle meningeal artery is affected, and it lies between the skull and the dura mater, and as I told you, the shape is typical. So here you can see an acute epidural hematoma or extradural hematoma with a lot of mass effect, right side to left side. What is happening here? The midline has shifted, okay, towards the left side, and there is a lot of increased intracranial pressure on the side. So you have multiple acute subdural hematomas also in this patient, and there's effacement of all the sulci gyri on both the sides, and this lateral ventricle has become disfigured. You can see here this area on the left side. So remember, this is right side, this is left side of the patient, this is anterior, this is posterior. So this orientation is very important. You should never get the sides wrong, because patient, if they go for surgery, you need to know the right side where the patient needs to relieve the hematoma. So this is basically subacute. As you can see, the shade of gray is similar to the adjacent parenchyma, and you can't even make out the shape clearly because the density is very similar to the adjacent parenchyma. But this is a subacute epidural hematoma. Sometimes you can have a difficulty in distinguishing epidural or subdural, but if it's an acute case, it's usually easier to distinguish. So subdural hematoma is more common in elderly and alcoholics who have cerebral atrophy, and there is more often, this is because of the veins, and it is a venous bleed, okay, and it's usually crescent shaped, that is convex on one side, concave on the other side. Here you can see an acute subdural hematoma. So here it's convex, here it is slightly concave. Sometimes the shape may not be very typical. Remember the age, the history, and associate all that, and also correlate. See, look for any fractures also. Usually fractures are associated with extradural hemorrhages because of the trauma. Okay, and here you have a chronic subdural hemorrhage, but a small amount of acute hemorrhage on that. So this is acute on chronic SDH, subdural hemorrhage. On this is on the left side, this is mass effect, right side, midline shifted to the right side. This is right, this is left. So if you see the ventricle is pushed to the other side, so wherever it is pushed to, that is midline shift of towards the right side here. And in this case, there's midline shift towards the left side. You can see the effacement of the ventricles here, and you can see there is exvacuate dilatation of the left side lateral ventricles occipital horn. So that happens when there is mass effect. Subarachnoid hemorrhage, what are the causes? You can have trauma as a cause. You can have rupture of an aneurysm, which is an abnormal dilatation of the normal arteries which are there supplying the brain, and any AV malformations. History of sudden onset severe headache. Okay, that's a very classic symptom of any SAH. And you look for these places: suprasellar cistern, chordogeminal cistern, and of course all the sulci. And look for any high density blood. As you see here, you can see bright high density. So this is basically blood, acute blood. So acute subarachnoid hemorrhage you can see in the basal cisterns. SAH here, see, this is which one? Tentorium cerebelli. So along that, you are seeing the blood pooling. So that is also acute SAH. Okay, so now we will come to intraparenchymal hemorrhage. It occurs within the substance of the brain, can be caused by hypertension, trauma, or hemorrhagic stroke. So basically, when you have an infarct, it can undergo hemorrhagic transformation also and cause intraparenchymal hemorrhage. It will appear hyperdense. And you can have intraventricular hemorrhage when there can be either a subarachnoid hemorrhage or an intraparenchymal hemorrhage, which will secondarily extend to the ventricles, or it can be primary also. So small amount of bright blood inside the dependent part of the lateral ventricles. As you can see here, the posterior horn or the posteriormost aspect of the lateral horns, you will see blood. This is the intraparenchymal hemorrhage just adjacent to the ventricle. So it, corona radiata, that region. So basically look out for these conditions. They are very common. And thank you for paying attention.